How's this looking?
Yeah, here, Chad, you can sit here.
Dude, nice jorts.
Although,
way too long.
I don't know if we were even
What am I thinking?
Can I roll?
Yeah, dude.
I don't, well, if you have a mic,
It's tough.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got back on
do
my
we have an
Sunday
extra
night.
mic?
Europe and thanks. Yeah. Yeah.
Enjoyed it.
Okay.
Drove out here. I'm exhausted.
Yeah. Decided to do 100 a few weeks.
Bringing that baby to the top or what?
Test it.
We kind of want to. But,
Oh, photo.
Yeah, just to go to Alpine today. Just got a couple of resort laps in. These guys over here.
No, you're good.
Oh, yeah. Oh, wow. In
How's
Ireland.
the travel out? Where'd you play into?
It was pretty rough with
Go,
stuff.
Chris.
Nice. You get some reservoir.
You did 100 though?
Testing. Whoa, Chad's here.
Watch out, we got speed on him.
You running tomorrow, dude?
All right. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining us here. Again, this is the elite men's panel for tomorrow's 23K race. It's going to be an action-packed day. We've got a murderer's row here on stage. My name's Dylan Bowman. I'm part of the media team here for Broken Arrow. I'll be commentating the race tomorrow, so I expect you guys to keep it entertaining out on the race course tomorrow. But yeah, like I said, thanks for being here. We're probably going to wrap out on stage for, I don't know, maybe 40, 45 minutes, and then we'd love to open it up to questions from the audience. So if anything comes up that you're curious about, we'll get to that at the end of the panel. To get started, let's just go down the line. I'm going to have each of you introduce yourselves and sort of tell us where you're from.
Hello. Hi, I'm Morgan Elliott. I'm from Salida, Colorado.
Paddy O'Leary. I'm originally from Southeast Ireland, from Wexford. I live in San Francisco, and I'm the easier Irish man to understand on this stage.
My name is Zach Hanna. I'm from a small village called Dramara in the better part of Ireland, Northern Ireland. And yeah, excited to be here.
Chris Richards. I'm from northwest England in the Lake District, which is just below the Scottish border, if you like. First time in the States. Having a good time so far.
I'm Garrett Corcoran. I'm from Salt Lake, Utah.
I finally know what it means.
My name is Eli Hemming. I am from Kremlin, Colorado.
I'm Chad Hall. I'm from San Diego.
All right, thanks, guys. Before we get into it, I want to first acknowledge that 4 of our panelists were over in Innsbruck last week competing in the World Championships. I figured this would be a fun place to start. Maybe, Morgan, we'll start with you. I'd love to get each of our 4 World Championship competitors to just share a little bit about that experience over there and maybe how you're feeling in its aftermath.
Yeah, Innsbruck, that was good. I got the opportunity to race the VK in the Classic, and had a hell of a time. Stayed over there for a good while, and our teammates they did 3rd overall as a scoring as a nation. That was super exciting to be a part of, and just a lot of viewing and watching and cheering and losing your voice, cheering on the 80K guys coming through. That was a special moment to watch, but yeah, it was pretty awesome.
You posted about the fact that you were realizing that you needed a rest after the race last weekend, and here you are at Broken Arrow racing both the VK and the 23K. But I think this is a relatable thing, right? It's like, how did you recognize the fact that you needed the rest, and how do you plan to honor that instinct here after race weekend?
Yeah, I mean, it has been a busy season for me so far. The legs, whenever they just get really heavy and you just have no gears and can't really turn over. I didn't have quite the races I wanted in the VK and the Classic in Austria, but just super happy to be a part of it. But yeah, at least taking like 4 days completely off was just hitting the reset button and finding some gears changing up on the VK yesterday. That was finally like a pretty good sign that those days of rest were good. So maybe I can rally for the 23K, but just rest up for the later part of the season. But it's Tahoe, you got to be here, and you got Western States next weekend. So
This is a tough time to rest between Broken Arrow and Western States. Zach, let's go to you. We'll skip over Patty. We'll come back to him in a sec. Let's stick with this theme of the World Championships. Tell us about your race at the vertical and representing your home country of Ireland and how it all went.
Yeah, as Dylan said there, I ran the vertical race for Ireland, and I was very lucky to be part of the largest ever Irish team to attend the World Championships. And it was a great experience as usual. And personally, my race didn't go as well as I would like to. I picked up a cold in the days leading into the race, which overall affected my result. Bit disappointing, but it's another experience that you learn from, and it just means it gave me the opportunity to look forward to coming out here a lot more. First time racing in the US, so even though the Worlds were disappointing, always had this to look forward to, and it certainly helped get over that bad result.
So maybe say a few more words about that, having been 5th in the world last year as a young 26-year-old lad. You sort of, I think, established yourself on the sort of world mountain running circuit at that point. A top 5 finish at a world championship is one for the resume. How do you sort of deal with the disappointment of, you know, feeling like you underperformed this year at Innsbruck, and what'd you learn from it?
I think from my own perspective, I had put a bit of pressure on myself to try and better that result going into this year's World Championships, and obviously it was going to be very hard to try and better that, but just on the day the body wasn't right for that, to try and better that performance. And it's part of being an athlete. You have your good days, you have your rough days, but at the end of the day, it's how you move on from that, how you brush yourself off and just come back and be more determined to do better the next time. Coming 5th was absolutely brilliant. It was a career high, and it just makes me more motivated to want to experience more highs like that in the future, and it just gets you out the door whenever the weather's maybe not great, and just to carry on doing all the training.
We had an awesome race yesterday. Maybe we'll come back and talk about that before we move ahead towards tomorrow's race. Christopher, same question to you. Tell us about Worlds. I know you sort of felt the same as Zach, and that you felt like you underperformed, and here you are to try and build back from that. Tell us about your experience over there in Innsbruck.
It was a similar experience to Zach. Yeah. But I think having reflected on it this week, it was something like 45 minutes for a VK, which in hindsight is a pretty decent time for us. Like I think it was 7K and 1,000 meters. I think in the majority of race VKs around the world, that would have actually placed pretty high, maybe even won, like the vast majority. But it's kind of hard to kind of explain like the standard of that race. I think me and Zach actually had fairly decent races. It was just the percentages at that level is it's such fine margins. I think like people were finishing every few seconds in that race. So if something's even just a little bit off at that high level, you're just so it's just so fine margins. Like I think we were only like 2 or 3 minutes back from the winner, it's kind of hard to accept the fact that like it's 31st in the world I was, which is actually like in hindsight I'm quite proud of that. But at the time I'm not used to finishing 30th place. I'm used to being in the top 5 at least, and I think I was only maybe 1 or 2% off, and that's the difference between being in the top 10 and just kind of scraping into the top 30. It's an interesting lesson for sure.
It's such a good point. I think, Patty, you said this to me last year at Broken Arrow. You finished 14th at the VK, and you ran like a 90-second PR. You're like, what the heck? Like, this is the lowest I've ever placed, and it's the fastest I've ever run.
Well,
so
it was the same you'll probably talk about the VK later. It was the same thing yesterday.
Yeah.
Like, I was 12th, and I was beating guys I beat last time, and I'm like, they're all just getting younger and faster.
The standard in the sport is definitely rising. It's an exciting time to be in the sport. Garrett, I want to hear about your World's performance. You're the top American, 14th place at the Classic Mountain event. Super, super strong. So tell us about that. When you posted about it, you posted something about sort of the balance between taking risks and racing smart. So maybe elaborate on that.
I definitely took some risks in that race. Topped the first climb, I found myself 20 seconds in the lead. I had kept running when some of the other guys started hiking and just kind of floated away from them. And I was looking around. We were only like 30 minutes into a 4-hour-plus race, but I felt really good. And I was like, are they just going to let me run away with it? And the downhill started. I rolled my ankle and just got like demolished. I ended up in 19th by the time we got down to the aid station down there, which wasn't that much time, but I was a lot of places back, and I definitely like kind of freaked out because I had lost more places than I expected to, and started the next climb, balls to the wall, just blowing by people. And a lot of the European guys that I had passed and ended up passing me later in the race were like, man, you were going so fast on that climb. Like, that was incredible. But they ended up beating me because I had blown my load early. And it was a fun experience. And, like, I'm proud of the way that I battled to the end. Like, I was fighting these leg-locking cramps and had to stop a few times on the last descent. And I was going back and forth with the guys that finished near me the whole time, and lost most of those battles, which was a little bit disappointing. But I left it all out there. I couldn't have gone any faster by the time I finished. I think the only way that I might have been able to go faster is just racing tactically different. But in terms of effort, like.
So what did you learn from that? Like, what would you do differently? Because this was your first time representing Team USA. I think everybody agrees you've got immense talent. You probably will be representing Team USA many more times among other amazing, high quality, high competitive races over the next several years. So what did you learn from it? What would you do differently?
I think, those races are long. If I'm going to be running another race of that distance, I don't need to try to make up time and space so quickly. If I'm running my pace, everybody will come back to me anyway. And that's what I had told myself before the race, and just kind of forgot once the gun went off, because I didn't want the race to get away from me, and I didn't want the leaders to float away and then not be able to catch them later. But I feel like in mountain running, more so than in track and road racing, it's a lot more of a personal journey, and you need to be out there running your own race. And if you run somebody else's race, you're probably going to get sucked into a race that you're not going to perform as well in. So, just keep it a little bit calmer.
Yeah, well, still 14th place in the world, top American, a lot to be proud of, a lot to build from there. Eli, maybe let's go to you. You've got a really unique background, so maybe for those who aren't familiar with your story, just tell them your multi-sport background, how you ended up in trail running.
So I was pretty much a triathlete my entire life. My mom started a youth triathlon team when I was 7 years old. So one of the few people that can say I've done 20 years of triathlon, and I'm only 28 now. Mm-hmm. I raced professionally for about 6 years, and then kind of found that I was a little burnt out on it. Happens after 20 years. And I was traveling around the world, not seeing anything but hotel rooms and cities. And I'm not a city guy. So kind of me and my wife kind of were going through the same revelation at the same time. Like, we're not super happy with our current situation, but we both need to find something that we love to do, and we both love the outdoors. We both love training for big performances, but like putting our bodies through the ringer. So we ended up at just some random race in Colorado, some trail race, and both just fell in love with it instantly. And like, what if we became trail running vagabonds? And it was kind of just like a joking question that turned serious pretty quick.
So Tabor here is in the audience, and I think she was on the Elite Women's panel just a little while ago. Maybe at the risk of making her blush or making both of you cry, talk about kind of sharing that journey together, because I'm remembering back to last year's VK when you both showed up wearing the like Screaming Eagle, United States of America cotton T-shirts, and then you and Cam Smith had the battle of the weekend in the VK last year. Talk about sharing that journey with Tabor.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the time that I haven't been with Tabor for that long. It's only been 4 years now. Already married, just instantly fell in love with her, and it was kind of one of those, I'm going to spend the rest of my life with her, and every day I try to spend a little bit more time with her. So here I am doing trail running with her, and trying to spend as much time with her as I can.
Yeah. Forgive me for getting sentimental. This is sort of my style here. This is what I like to do.
If I can get her to blush, it's good. It's a good day.
Well, you're both going to be racing tomorrow, and we'll keep the audience appraised as to how you're both doing. Chad, man, you were one of the stories of the mountain running season last year, I feel like. Maybe just kind of introduce yourself to the folks here. You were a late addition to the panel today, and what your background is and sort of how you ended up in the trail side of the sport.
Yeah, so fun little fact, actually. Eli and I were on a professional triathlon team a long time ago. So it's been fun getting to know him again in the trail running scene. But yeah, I've kind of also done this full circle thing where started out as a runner, got into triathlons, got into road cycling, got into mountain biking, back to trail running, which is really my roots growing up in Big Bear Lake. We grew up like running on the Pacific Crest Trail, so it's been fun getting back out there. But yeah, I transitioned from mountain biking back to running, and trail running was a natural way to kind of get reintegrated into it. That strength kind of crosses over. But since then, I've been back doing some more road running, did 2 marathons in February and did Boston in April. So we're going to see how a marathon transitions back over the trails.
It's funny. I think people send me your Strava files more than any other athlete. So maybe expand on that of just like having that versatility and that multi-sport background like Eli and how it's helped you specifically on the trails.
Yeah, it's funny. The last time I was out in Tahoe was during the pandemic, and I bought a van, just threw a bed in there, took off up into the Sierras, and I was racing bikes at the time. So I was just up here trying to take every KOM in sight. So I must have done Donner Pass like 10 times trying to get that KOM. So that's, I think, where the genesis of my Strava came from, was just like wanting to hammer all the time. And every runner who starts riding the bike just is like, this is awesome. I get to go hard like all the time. But coming back to running, actually, I think one of the things that I've learned is you can't do that. And so it's been this process of like, I love to run hard and train hard. And, you can put yourself like deep in the well when you do that on a regular basis. So it's been fun to kind of relearn how to train properly. And marathon has definitely helped me do that because, like, it's one of those sports where you got to do it in a very specific way. So yeah, like, one of the things I'm going to take forward, and I suggest for all you guys in your training programs, is like train properly. Don't just train hard all the time. And that's where I think, I've probably gotten too much attention for my Strava because I tend to just slam it.
It's a good point. Maybe that's something we can come back to talking about, is just like saving your best effort for the days when it matters most, which is probably the hardest thing for all professional athletes. Patty, we got to get to you, bro. I know we recorded a long podcast just a few days ago, but you've raced Broken Arrow probably more than anybody else in race history. So maybe just to start, say a few words about Brendan, the team here at Broken Arrow, and what's made it special for your career.
I think this is my 6th year doing Broken Arrow and like my 10th race. I think I've found my perfect balance at the VK 23K double. I'm an ultra runner, but the 50K, I like throwing down against these fast lads. But what Brendan and Ethan and Jeff and Sean have all created here, it's just the community vibes that they bring to the event, and everything they do, from the elites down to people who are just breaking the cutoffs and the people who are just here cheering and experiencing. Like this feels like, I've been fortunate to race in Europe in the Alps, and this feels like that. They've just created a good vibe about every different aspect of it. I just love what they've created, and I plan to do this for decades to come, as long as my body will let me.
So give us the race report from yesterday. You finished 12th, but again, ran a huge PR. Yeah. How did it feel? How did it compare to past years?
I don't know. I've learned recently that I think the last couple of years, maybe as I'm getting older, of like being more cautious in my 100K racing, or taking it easier at the start. And I struggled to translate that into the shorter stuff about digging the hole very early. I tried to dig in the hole early yesterday, and I did till the bottom of that snow wall. I grew up in Ireland. He's up in the north. They get a bit more snow than I did. I'd get an inch of snow would be a record, like. And I was like a lost sheep, or lost little deer, baby deer, on the way up that slope. I heard the drone on top of me as well. Are they just zooming in on how incompetent I am at climbing this wall? Because I was close to these lads. I remember seeing Borden was like right ahead of me, and then when I got to the top, they were like 2 or 3 minutes ahead. I'm like, oh God. But the next 2 miles, it opened up, and I was able to catch some lads and get back up and move pretty well. And now, 2 days later, tomorrow, a lot more is going to be melted, so it's going to be faster again.
Your post yesterday was typically hilarious. I think you used the words, what was it? It was chaos. Hold on, I have it written down here. What did you say? You said,
I think
it was pure chaos, and disrespectful.
So that was a quote from the race director, Brendan Madigan. We were sitting here last night talking about the race, and he was like, I was saying just how miserable that little section was and how challenging it was. He was like, oh yeah, it's disrespectful, that little section.
It's a perfect description, isn't it?
We don't have to do that part tomorrow, but I hear the back is reasonably disrespectful as well.
Yeah, amazing. So Morgan, let's maybe hear the same thing from you. You finished 6th in the VK yesterday. You were 3rd in the VK last year. And one of the things that I'd love to hear you talk about is just like doubling back, right? You've done a bunch of these races, like, you know, Golden Trail and stuff, where you race multiple times over the course of just a few days. How do you approach that? And maybe tell us a little bit about your VK experience yesterday too.
Yeah, whenever you go into the first race of kind of this trilogy of the weekend, it's kind of like a primer is how I treat it. It's just something to shake off the nerves, get the legs fired up and going. And it's just running. It's just a VK. There's nothing too serious going on. It's just for fun. So I guess it just kind of primes you and gets you ready for the next 23K as it is here.
You were wearing a Team Japan shirt. It seems like you did the classic jersey swap. Mm-hmm. Rui Ueda's a friend of mine too. Maybe say a few words about Rui.
Yeah, Rui, he's been doing the Golden Trail, and he's been doing a lot of skyrunning series races, and he's always up there on the podium. I finished right behind him at Pikes Peak last year. Don't know him personally, but you know, he's a hell of a runner, and he's had an accident, so I'm just sending him his best wishes. He's not going to be able to run for a while, so I figured it's just a way to give him some respect.
Yeah, just for our audience, Rui Ueda, probably the best mountain runner in Japan, just suffered a serious accident while outrunning himself. It's a good reminder to all of us of just how precious our health is and just how incredible it is to be here at Broken Arrow and for you guys all to be able to race tomorrow. Zach, same question to you, man. 4th place in the VK, coming from sea level here to California, first time racing in the U.S. Tell us how it went.
Yeah, the first 10 minutes I spent looking for my lungs, couldn't breathe. Big shock to the system. I've never raced this high before. Well, I've never started a race at this height before. So yeah, it was a big shock to the system. It took a long time to actually feel comfortable. But I think once I got halfway into the race, then the body started to respond well. But by that stage, a lot of the damage is done. Trying to come back from not being able to breathe, and especially with the start line being so steep and unforgiving and disrespectful, is the best way to put it. It was a bit of a slog, but I actually enjoyed it. The higher up we got when it came to the ropes and ladders, I seemed to really enjoy it. And it's just the best thing about the VKs, I think, as well, is you cross the finish line, and when you eventually get your breath back, you look around, you're up there at near 3,000 meters, and the views are something you'll never forget. It's incredible because everywhere, you're in the middle of June, and you're still seeing snow. Like, that's just brilliant. And yeah, it was a real tough experience, but it's definitely one I'd love to do again. Really enjoyed racing in the snow, and being racing against such high standard athletes, it just brings you on personally on your own level. It just makes you want to go and get better.
Isn't tomorrow like the longest race of your career, 23K?
Yeah, yeah, it would be. Yeah, I've never really done any long races before, so it's a bit of the unknown racing at this distance. I've trained longer before, but in terms of racing, it's going to be, yeah, it's a new challenge, but what I'm up for.
Heck yeah. Chris, back to you. I think we're dealing with a little bit of an injury earlier this year, but it seems like you've been able to find some form. But then you just told me that you arrived and feel like you've been a little bit under the weather, something that probably all of us up here can relate to. Maybe just talk us through maybe what you learned through injury and how you deal with sort of like the doubts in the back of your head when you arrive and aren't feeling 100%.
Yeah, right. So I was in Thailand last year for Worlds in November for Team GB, and I managed to roll my ankle, or completely kind of sprain it. It blew up so big, like 2 days before the uphill race. I ran on it twice. I was like, I can't fly halfway around the world just to not do these races. So raced the uphill on an ankle that was like kind of like that, and it was all black. Came 15th, so 10 places behind Zach there in Thailand, and then did the classic race as well. And there was only 1 day off in between that year, and then there was about 3 flights to get back from Thailand back to the UK, and it just got bigger and bigger on the flights. And so it took about a month off of running to get to get it healed up, because I think if you train through that, there's a big chance of developing some tendonitis in the ankle there. So I really wanted to rehab that properly, and I think it's stronger now, having been through that. It's kind of a good metaphor, really. I think if you rehab things properly and you go through these things, you can always come out the other side a little bit stronger. So yeah, coming back this year, kind of found the fitness pretty quickly because I was on the bike a lot, and that seemed to transfer really well. Just like Chad was saying, getting out on the bike when you got a runner who doesn't really cycle so much, getting on the bike, you can really send it, and that really helped the climbing fitness as well. So yeah, I think there's plenty of lessons to be learned there. I think, I don't know how Morgan found it, but I'm guessing you had DOMs as well from the Classic in Austria as well. So that was a really challenging race. I think it was 40% on asphalt on the road, and there was a lot of really quick downhill road. I think one of the GB guys dropped a 4:14 mile coming back down. So I was super sore after Austria coming back, and I think kind of played a little bit into just picking up this cold on the way over to America. What I've kind of realized is fitting in these 2 races, Austria, maybe it's not the best idea to double up again like the next week and jump time zones as well. I was a little bit ambitious potentially. Yeah, kind of picked up a cold and kind of had to bail on the VK a little bit. Just because I was going to do it. I picked up my number, dropped my bag off, and Sarah, who I flew out with, Sarah Willett, who came 3rd in the VK yesterday, she was like, don't be stupid. You're just going to ruin yourself, and just maybe give this one a miss, rest up tomorrow, and then maybe come back for the 23 if you're feeling a little bit better. And I was like, that's a smart move. I'm self-coached, and I think if I did have a coach, that's probably what they would say. So I think that was good advice. Hopefully feeling better tomorrow morning for the race.
Don't be stupid is always good advice. Good job, Sarah. Garrett, you sort of popped on my radar last year when you won the JFK 50, but from what I understand, you're like a sub-4 miler. You also, it looks like we're doing some split boarding up on the mountain today. So maybe just tell us a little bit about your background, and the thing that I'm maybe more interested in is where you see your strength as an athlete right now, because it seems like you could pick any number of different channels to sort of pour your competitive energy into.
Yeah, as far as my background, I grew up running track and I guess a little bit of road. Ran track in high school, ran for the University of California in college. Go Bears. Yeah, Kai over there was actually one of my teammates there. And I broke 4 when I was a redshirt freshman and had some decent success on the track, and I ran some good times, but I felt like I was always really inconsistent, and the fire was always getting extinguished as far as being competitive while I was on the track, and I went from not really enjoying the process and really enjoying competing to flipping around and really enjoying training and not enjoying competing by the time I was done, and I hung up the spikes when I graduated and didn't really see myself running competitively or much at all anymore. But I kind of came back to running as my fun social activity, and have eventually gotten talked into getting fit again and signing up for races, which is what's gotten me here. And I guess as far as my strengths, I think at least over the winter I really worked on my climbing strength. I'd wanted to run the VK in the Classic at Worlds, and I had qualified for the VK at the US Champs a month and a half ago, and didn't make it in the Classic, and then ran the Marathon Champs a week later, and felt like I had a way better performance there and felt really fresh finishing. And Max King told me I had a pretty good shot at finishing top 10 at Worlds if I did the marathon, so I dropped the VK because it was back-to-back days and I didn't want to race a marathon the day after that. Props to everybody that went and ran the VK yesterday, ran the 46K, but couldn't have been me out at Worlds. So yeah, I guess right now my climbing I feel like is my strength, and I like to be able to jump between distances. So
you touched on something that I think would be interesting to hear you talk about too, and that's just the importance of having fun. And even just looking at you, it seems like you're a guy who likes to have fun. And I mean, I just followed you on Instagram this morning, and I was dying laughing with your "this is so Euro" or "this is so East Coast" stuff. So I don't know if there's anything you want to say there, just following that feeling of what's fun and how the performance benefit it actually has with your running too.
Yeah, I feel like that has had a positive impact on my performance. I think that's why I wasn't enjoying competing anymore by the time I got to the end of college. Was I felt like I was always sacrificing stuff, and I could get some more performance gains by going and training harder, but I'd either run myself into the ground and get injured, or I'd show up to the races and just be tired of running and curl up the second things got hard. So when I graduated from college and when I decided to start getting back into competitive running, I wanted to tell myself I want to make sure I'm not sacrificing a lot. Ideally, I'm not sacrificing anything to go and do this, which is why you saw me walk onto the stage with my snowboard today. I was getting a couple of laps over at Alpine Meadows earlier today, and that's something I don't think takes anything out of me. I wasn't out there for that long and wore my sunscreen, and it's not like I was hiking up the hill. I was just taking the lift up, and it's a lot of fun. I can't just like sit there and think about a race for 2 days before and not get out and do stuff. So I think it has a positive impact on my performance, even if I'm like giving up some of my training and maybe not getting quite as fit. I think just enjoying it helps me perform a lot better.
Such a great lesson. Yeah. Eli, like Chad, you were sort of one of the major breakout stars of last year's sort of trail and mountain running season. If there's anything you want to share about like how you feel about last year upon reflection, and for the people out there who are like feeling like, how do I kind of take the next step in my own running, even if they're not professional, is there anything relevant from your season last year that you think would be helpful?
Honestly, I think last year was just all about learning. I came into it with training obnoxious amounts for triathlon, so I came in just about as fit as I could be. And every race, for those who don't know, I got second probably like 8 times because every time it came down to it, I didn't have the skills to do that. And so working on skills is just such an important thing, and I think that's been my major thing this year.
We just had a sprint finish down the chute, folks. Drama. Keep going, though. This is great.
I don't really know if I have a whole lot more. Like it was.
Maybe talk about learning, because I mean, you were racing some of the best athletes in the world. You were racing over in Europe a lot, and I think there is a lot to be said for just gaining experience, especially just racing against the best athletes in the world. Like, what were some of the things that you learned, like observing guys like Remy Bonnet and the other Europeans and the Golden Trail circuit and other athletes who may come to mind?
Yeah. Well, so last year it was. Me and Tabor kind of both took on the idea of, if we want to go full into this whole trail running thing, let's see how good the best in the world are. So we signed up for every race that we could, and we got our teeth kicked in as many times as we could. And that was here last year, Andy Wacker kicking my teeth in. It was at national champs too, Andy Wacker again kicking my teeth in. But then going over to Europe, it was seeing just the skill level of everyone. It was just another step above. It was something that I want to aspire to. Like, I want to learn how to run down hills and not absolutely trash my legs. I'd like to learn how not to crash as much downhill. Finishing our season last year in Madeira, every single day I came out with a new bruise and new cut, and it's something that. I think it's just a learning process. It takes time. It takes you can't just throw yourself down a mountain and be running 10 years later. So it's more about learning how to do the skills of trail running.
Right, like the hard work is not the hard part for you. Like
no.
Doing the training comes naturally. It's sort of like the technical skill development,
exactly.
more or less.
Yeah,
cool.
the trail, or the actual training itself, the big aerobic time, that's what I live for. That's what I love doing, and that's why I loved triathlon, because I got to train 30 to 35 hours a week. It was great.
Yeah.
But the racing itself was the problem, and so when I moved over here, it was like, oh, I can train 20 hours a week and have all this extra time in my life, and which some people still think 20 hours a week is a lot. It is, but I have a problem, so.
Chad, anything there that maybe feels relevant to your life and your experience also, just sort of like learning on the fly, but being such a high-level athlete and sort of like stepping into this new category of racing?
Yeah, definitely. I actually want to go back to what Garrett said about just having fun. So I think that's super crucial, and I know I experienced that as well, and I think a lot of us that ended up in triathlon or cycling or trail running, came from track and we kind of lost the passion. And, it's something that I think sometimes we have coaches that say you have to do it a certain way. And I would say if there's one thing I would just encourage people to do is like find a way that works for you. And for Garrett, means having fun going out and, split boarding today. And I think that's awesome. It's like you got to kind of follow your heart with that. Yeah.
So tell us about how Boston went. That was probably like 2 months ago now. And then like what the last 2 months have looked like. And how do you then like change the specificity of your training moving from a road marathon to sort of like a mountain half marathon?
Yeah, so from Boston, so for one, I tried to come back and do the national championship trail stuff 2 weeks later. Didn't go so well. So I'd say for one, for marathoners, give yourself some time to rest. Like, don't try to do crazy stuff afterwards. So that honestly took me a pretty good amount of time to recover from. So I went back to Big Bear Lake over the last month or so and just went out and just had fun on the trails, running, not doing anything super specific, just doing some good volume, enjoying days out. So I'm not totally sure if I'm ready for this or not. I haven't done like a ton of intensity, but it's kind of fun to just go into that unknown and see what's there.
Great. So maybe just to toss a question out to the panel, and whoever wants to take it can take it, but in an effort to make you guys all relatable, obviously we all have ups and downs in our careers, and the downs always feel endless. And maybe if there's any examples of dealing with adversity, of failure, underperformance, etc., how you came through that moment and maybe what you learned as a result.
I guess like 7 weeks ago, I was out doing the Ultra Trail Mount Fuji 100 miler. And last couple of years, I've been having some I tried to target 50 mile and above. That's the stuff I've kind of found myself leading into. And ended up having to get my first DNF. After hour 5, started puking, and around hour 13, I was still puking and had about 100 calories in me over the last 8 hours. So I was like, all right, maybe it's time to call it a day. So myself and my fiance Eleanor, we decided to call it a day because there's a lot of racing left this summer. But like for a couple of days after that, I was just in an absolute hole. But then everyone just kept reminding me, they're like, buddy, you still went out and like hammered 100K around like Japan. You get to do this. Like, remember that. It's still a huge achievement. So it's just continuing to remind myself that we're so fortunate to be able to do what we do. All of us are so fortunate we get to go out and adventure in these hills as our pastime. So just being eternally grateful for the experiences we get to do. I think keep reminding yourself of that and have fucking fun out there.
Anybody else want to add to that period of injury or a really important race that you just totally blew it on and sort of what you learned as a result?
I think elite athletes in general just kind of have a tendency to take it way too seriously. Yeah. There's like a massive correlation between stories here about just getting like totally sucked into the sport and performance, and like the kind of the way out from that is just gratitude, as Paddy was saying, and also just reminding yourself of why you started and what it's all about. So yeah, that's the key for me. Like being able to take like a view from above. Like running isn't everything. Like it's just running. Just to keep reminding yourself of that and just be have gratitude as like the main focus really. Being grateful.
Yeah, I think it's good for us to experience some failure every once in a while and maybe even like bake it into our routine every year. I signed up for some skimo races this past year, and there were a couple people in the crowd that beat me in these skimo races by a lot.
They're already laughing at you. You just say skimo and they're laughing at you. What happened?
Well, it's a very gear-specific, like oriented sport, and I had a lot of gear issues with my skins falling off and just not being good at skiing. Like you see me on the split board, and I ski a little bit, but I'm not a very good skier, so I was just getting destroyed in these races. But it's a good reminder to go out there and finish in the back 10% of the powder keg and realize that everybody still respects you just the same. So when you come out to something where you're expected to do well, like for me at a running race, it takes the pressure off because everybody will still look at me the same afterwards regardless. It doesn't really matter if I do fail. And it makes it easier to do well, I think.
Love it. Thanks, guys. Maybe final question before we open it up to the audience, just a quick one for each of you. This is how I closed it in yesterday's panel, too, and it leaves us all with good feelings before tomorrow's race, and that is just sort of like meditating on the fact that even though you guys are all going to be doing battle individually tomorrow, that this is a team sport more or less. There's a lot of people in your corner that make it possible to take the start line tomorrow. If you want to shout out a person or a group of people who supports you in your training and makes your life as an athlete possible, we can start with you, Morgan.
Sweet. Yeah, I think of Salida, 7,000 feet as our run club, so definitely we meet up 3 times a week, and it doesn't matter if you're super fast or super slow, we all just take it easy and meet up at every single like trailhead checkpoint. You know, it's every like 5 minutes we meet up, but it's just super social, and everybody just chats and sees what's going on, asks how each others are doing. It's just a great mental health thing. But yeah, shout out to 7,000 Feet Running Company. Yep, for sure. Thanks, Salida.
I'll have to give a shout out to my partner Eleanor in the back over there. She like comes around and like chases me through the night while crewing me through 100 milers and all this crazy stuff. But also is like a constant level of support with all the high ups and downs of this sport. A particular shout out for her. She's actually, it's cool, we're here this weekend. I'm here racing, but she's actually here after designing the t-shirts. So several people are wearing her the finishers hats for the 52Ks. Anyone got that white hat on? I saw someone walking through there a second ago. But she got to design a lot of these things, and she designed the trophies for the winners. So whoever wins it tomorrow gets a trophy that she built, which is pretty cool. But
where is Eleanor? Eleanor,
stand up on the back.
There she is.
She's back there
Shout out,
cutting
Eleanor.
these temporary tattoos, which you all should go over and hound her about.
Go ahead, Zach.
Just the same, similar to everyone else. Just like to give a shout out to everyone back home, friends, family, my dog Cora. Say hello to my dog, and my running club Newcastle. Everyone at home has been so supportive and everything that I've been doing over the last few years, and it's great to know that no matter how well you race or how bad you race, you're always going to have people at home who are still cheering you on and getting you ready to go for the next race. It's brilliant, and I can't thank them enough for it.
Up, down.
Thanks, Zach. Go ahead, Chris.
I'd like to give a shout out to the fell running community back home in the UK. It's a pretty good scene of racing, totally different from this. Yeah, I think it's always get a lot of encouragement from the guys. Yeah, probably mum and dad as well. Can't forget them.
First I'd like to shout out the Falls Road Running Club in Baltimore, Maryland. That kind of held my hand back into running after I had experienced a lot of burnout, and also my friends in Salt Lake that I get out and run with almost every day. A lot of them are in the crowd and raced today, yesterday. Got Liam Hammonds, Jacob Grant, Kai Benedict, Arbella Frati. Mike Sinceri over there spent a whole week out on the East Coast with me.
The champ.
Over a month ago.
That's
and
so
he just
East
won.
Coast. It's so
and he
East
just won the
Coast.
46K. Congrats, dude.
Shout out Mike Sinceri, your 46K champion over here.
But yeah, those guys make it easy to get out the door. If I was doing it by myself, I don't think I'd enjoy it as much, and I'd probably get burnt out pretty quick. So, without you guys, I wouldn't be here. So, thanks.
Love it. Community. I mean, it seems like you guys have a great thing going on in Salt Lake, Salida as well, Bay Area, Boulder. It is all about community. Eli, you next.
Hard for me not to thank the wife over there. She's the reason I'm here doing this. I wouldn't have found trail running without her. And she's there training with me every single day, always pushing me out the door, like ready to go. I'm a little bit slower to get to start, so she's always there, whipping me going.
And likewise, my girlfriend Claire. I think one of the things I love and hate about running and competing is we all, I think, experience some amount of self-doubt beforehand, where you just don't know what's going to happen, and you kind of wonder if you got what it takes. And she's definitely my big hype person who always gets me pumped up.
Amazing. Let's turn to the audience. You guys have any comments or questions for our esteemed panel before they take the start line of tomorrow's 23K race? Feel free to throw your hand up. Is there a question over there?
This lady up here.
Oh, there you go. Yep. Go ahead. Okay, I'm going to just repeat it for the audience. Choose your best race or your worst race and summarize it in 2 words.
I have to think about it.
This may require a little bit.
My best race, the Dipsy. It's perfectly chaotic. And then my worst race, Ultra Trail Mount Fuji, imperfectly pukey.
And purely disrespectful, yes. Anybody else want to add?
I'll do mine. Boston Marathon. One word, loud.
Yeah, my favorite race I've run, maybe it's just because it's a little fresh in my mind, but the World Champs last week, Euro Energy.
I think my best race came in Italy last year in a 20K in a little town called Milano that just gets so psyched about running fast up mountains. I'd probably describe that as hot and hard.
Sleeve Donard race, absolutely class. Worst race would be last week's World Championships, absolutely brutal.
That leaves Eli and Morgan. Who wants to go first?
Yeah, I'll go. I would think Zagama. It was 3 races ago. It was pretty fun. And this time around, it was just, my one word would be a slip and slide.
I think I got to say my worst race would be Sierzanal, and that would be terribly paced. Don't run with Killian. Bad idea.
Don't run with Killian.
Don't
Great learning. Great learning.
Bad idea.
Maybe we got one more question here. Good question. The question is, what was your most fun training day, and what are the elements that go into fun training?
I'll take this one because he was probably directing that at me anyway, and he wants me to say something that's not running. So yeah, just because Kai asked it, probably some of the big ski days I had over the winter. It doesn't really feel like training. You're just out there having fun all day and out there for 13 hours and climbing a bunch and bushwhacking. I think the one that's coming to mind right now, which was brutal and awful and like a little bit scary, but also like one of the most memorable days I had over the winter, was going out and exploring a new zone with a friend and bushwhacking for, I think we were out there for 14 hours. We finished in the dark for 2 hours, and when we got to the end, there was a truck that was trying to get out of the road that we were skiing out on, and they were stuck, and they asked us for a push, and just like had no idea how dead we were, and we helped push them out, and then they got stuck again, and we just left them there. But I'd say that those are probably the most fun for me.
Anybody else want to add a fun training day?
I'd echo that. Like, I think the best training is when it doesn't actually feel like training. I think training partners are a huge part of that as well. So I think my best training sessions have come when we actually haven't talked about running at all. Like me and Zach were just talking about this earlier. When you're just talking about just life in general and just having a bit of banter on the trails and stuff. And when it's actually, there's a bit of adversity comes up when you're actually doing a session, you don't know if you can quite finish it. And you make it through that, and you've had some buddies with you to kind of see you through that super hard session. That's when that's my best days out for sure.
Yeah, some of my best training sessions generally come when I'm with my dog. Recently, I done a 3-hour recce in the Mourne Mountains with my dog, and just 3 hours in the hills with my dog. It's just one of the best days you could ever ask for.
I think you were asking more of the elements of those best training days. The elements are the best part of that. The weather, when the weather is just really really shitty. I just love those experiences because when no one else is out there, you're like, yeah, I'm hardy, I'm doing this. And I think one of the memories that really stands out, I did this 24-hour mountain round back in Ireland called the Wicklow Round a couple of years ago, and I was back at Christmas visiting home. And myself and Gavin Byrne, one of the Irish lads, shout out to Gavin on the YouTube, we went and tried to do 7 peaks of this 25 peak or 26 peak round, and we spent 5 hours and 50-mile-an-hour winds, sub-zero temperatures, just absolutely dying. But there was going to be a pint in the burger at the end, so we made it home.
It reminds me of the 52-mile training run that you had this spring before UTMF, where you were out in an atmospheric river the entire time too. So
it's in my blood.
It's in your blood, the Irish blood. Anybody else want to add this before we wrap it up? Fun training anecdotes?
Yeah. Anything with a ridge. I have a lot of memories with that. So heavy pack, full of food, bring your water filter, and you're just going out with some friends and you're just bushwhacking. Gotta love the bushwhack and Nolan, scouting, just a lot of those are the memorable days.
Yes.
Weather coming in.
Cool. Well, we can wrap it up there. Big round of applause for our panel. Gentlemen, thanks for doing this. Get out of the sun. Good luck tomorrow. And for our viewing audience, make sure you check out the live stream. We're going to be going live at, I think, 7:30 a.m. tomorrow. Myself and Corrine Malcolm are going to host that broadcast, and we will be doing our best to bring the action to life and to keep you all entertained. Good luck, everybody.
Thanks for having us.
Definitely.